I'm Anupama Sikchi and I'll talk about SQL injection. First, let me start with why SQL injection. SQL injection is a serious security threat for web application. They allow attackers to obtain unrestricted access to databases, underlying application, and potentially sensitive information that these databases contain. Although researchers and practitioners have proposed various methods to address SQL injection, it still poses a problem because not many people know about it. Let me tell about what SQL injection is, its real-world example, important SQL syntaxes. I'll show you an example website and I'll also show you a real world website and its prevention techniques. So first let me start with what SQL injection is. SQL injection refers to the class of code injection attacks in which the data provided by the user is included as an SQL query in such a way that the user's input is treated as an SQL code. By using this vulnerability, the attacker can submit SQL commands directly to the database. These attacks are very serious because they exploit the security vulnerability of a website. Let me tell you about the real world example. In 2011, a massive SQL injection attack had compromised 200,000 ASP.NET websites. Another example of an SQL injection is this, when SQL injection this shows that SQL injection attacks has jumped by more than 2/3 in 2012 from quarter 1 to quarter 2, which shows how badly this attack is affecting. Here are various stories of SQL injection attacks. Another thing of the Open Web Application Security Project, this rates SQL injection as a top 10 security risk. You can see SQL injection in the A1 injection. So what is the intent of SQL injection? Why is it used? SQL injection is used to extract data. It is used to add or modify data. It is used to bypass authentication and to execute remote commands. What are the types of SQL injection? Tautologies, queries to gain access to other user, piggybacked queries, illogical or incorrect queries, and union queries. First, let me talk to you about tautology. I'll show this by first, what is tautology? Tautology is a query which always evaluates to true. I'll show you by an example over here. This is a website. Let me first guarantee to you that it is an authenticated website. Here. And when I log in as a legitimate user, it gives me access. Now, let me use an SQL injection for this. Now let me tell you what happens when you execute this SQL injection. Here you have the query. Select start from user where username equals to some user and password equals to something. When you access as a legitimate user, it interprets like this. Now, when you execute this query, this SQL injection, what happens is select start from user where username is equals to a blank space or 1 equals to 1. 1 equals to 1 will always result to true and will let you access the website. Here, you can put the password as anything because the rest of the part here is commented. Here you can enter the website. Let me tell you that the first user of a database table is mostly an admin. So the user gains the admin access through this. Now, another example of an SQL injection is this. When you use this as an SQL injection, it interprets like select start from user where username equals to anything or a blank space equals to a blank space or and password equals to anything or a blank space equals to a blank space. This is again a tautology and will let you access the first entry of the database table. Here. Another example of an SQL injection is access as another user. What happens over here is, suppose you give your SQL injection as this. What happens on the other end is select star from user where username equals select star from user where username equals to anything or username equals to admin. The rest of the part here is commented. Now when you give this as an SQL injection, you gain the access. Another thing which can happen is a user enters as a legitimate user, and then he goes to change password. He gives his real password in the old password and an SQL injection in the new password field. You can see what happens on the other end. The SQL command first verifies the old password of the user. If the old password is correct, yes it is correct, then this SQL statement takes place. Update user set password equals to new password. When I put my SQL injection over here, set password is equals to some password which I had given and where username equals to admin. What happens over here is the admin's password is changed. So these are very serious attacks. Another example is a piggyback query. What happens in a piggyback query is the user gives another query as a part of an SQL injection. So what he does is, in the password field, he gives a certain password and followed by a semicolon, he gives a drop query or a truncate query, which is very big security attack. Now, let me show you an example of a union query, and it's a real world example. So how to start with hacking. So in your Google, you type in URL story.php !ID. You can also type, there are various other codes, page.php or something like that, and you Google search. So let me take this example first. So first you need to check if this site is vulnerable to SQL injection. How can you check is like this. Here you have an error message which clearly says that this site is vulnerable to SQL injection. Now the real world work begins. Okay, I give an order by it is still okay. I change this order by from 2, 3, 4, 5 and then like 9. It is still okay. And then again increase it to 10. This time you can see that it throws an error. So you can know that there are 9 entries. Now you give an SQL injection command. You select from 1 to 9 all the entries. Union select 1. See, these 3 queries had resulted to a true. I mean these 3 entries. So now replace any of these, like I replace 3 by a database query. I know the name of the database now. Similarly, I can know the name of the column names, the table names, and I can also know the user entries. This is how SQL injection can work on a website. Now let me tell you what are the preventive techniques for SQL injection. Firstly, do not reveal your technology, whether you are using a PHP technology or a JSP or an ASP.NET, because that makes the website more vulnerable because the user gets to know how to hack your system. Secondly, use a dynamic SQL only if it is necessary. In Java, you have prepared statement which is not a dynamic SQL. You can use that. Thirdly, remove all the functionality of your database which you are not using, because leaving loopholes in your database will make your website more vulnerable. Fourthly, use automated testing tools for SQL injections. These are all the references I used for preparing this video assignment. Thanks a lot.